لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد معدن الجود والكرم وآله وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. Going to continue our reading of Wael Hallaq's The Impossible State. So, The Impossible State, Islam, Politics and Modernity's Moral Predicament. It has 7 chapters. We are going to initially read the introduction and then we'll see if we need to read anything else. So his preface and acknowledgement, one thing to note about this is that he's from McGill University. All his references are either non-Muslims or I don't know about Qasim Zaman, but or Mahmoud Madani. But Akil Bilgrami and Talal Asad. Okay, so let's start from here, introduction. Okay, Bismillah. The argument of the book is fairly simple. Well, simple is a vague term. The Islamic State, judged by any standard definition. What is a standard definition? So we have Islam and we have a state, and our definition will depend on the definition of both of them and understanding of them. So what's the standard definition? In Western academia, a state is studied in different disciplines: politics, sociology, political economy, philosophy, political philosophy. So there's nothing as simple here, I can tell you that. The Islamic State, judged by any standard definition of what modern state. Now, what they're talking about state, and it's talking about Islamic State, and it's talking about modern state. And then we would have to decide what is modern state and how is it distinguished from other types of state. Now, this is both impossibility and a contradiction in terms. That's a big red flag. Big red flag here. For anybody who starts reading this. So Islamic State is an impossibility and contradiction in terms. Okay. So let's dwell on this for a while. So there are a few terms involved here. Islamic State, then you have a modern state, the state is here something common. Islamic and modern are the adjectives qualifying the state. Then you're talking about standard definition. Obviously, by standard you mean in the Western academia. And then we have impossibility, which is a term as well, because we have to see, well, what does he mean by impossibility, whether it's physical impossibility, factual impossibility, or logical impossibility. And if it is a logical impossibility, how is it different from contradiction in terms? Obviously, he's going to explain in the next paragraph, probably it will be clearer, but it's important. That's how we should study these sort of books. That's how we should question these sort of books, if we are going to study them at all. You know what I mean? Just to start with state. What is a state in general? Firstly, it's a form of human association. Like, for example, society is a form of human association as well. A tribe is a form of human association as well. A family is a form of human association as well. So how these are distinguished from each other? Or maybe they have different aspects. So a tribe can be a part of society as well as a state. A family can be a part of society as well as state as well. But one thing is clear: a society is a form of human association, and can be distinguished from other human association by its function, for example, function of market, or purpose, if you want to say, or telos. So the purpose of market is not to establish order, for example, even though well-functioning of market might be part of the establishment of order. So even though a state is a form of human association, it can be distinguished from other form of human associations like market by its function, its purpose, and its telos. They are similar sort of things. So we can say that the purpose of market is selling and buying, but the purpose of state, on the other hand, is to establish order, for example. Establish order and security. In that sense, it's a human association based in human needs. Human association based in human needs. So the state is a form of human association and can be distinguished from other human association by its function, which is to establish order, security, peace, and it does it because the function of society might be the same, for example, to establish order and peace, but then we would distinguish society from state in its the way it establishes. For example, in family you establish order and peace of some sort too, and in tribe and in a community. But so it might be different from in a way or the method. And one of the method of establishing order is what distinguish it from is force. What distinguishes a state from other institution and association is force. And normally the force is manifested in laws and their implementation. But not every use of force can can be called the method of state, because for example, a bunch of robbers, for example, they also use force. And the rebels might use force as well. Rebels against state, for example. Obviously, it's easy to distinguish between these uses of force because rebels and robbers are not using force to establish order. But not every type of force is the modern, the normal modus vivendi of the state. What distinguishes the state's use of force from other use of forces is that it is normally, as long as the state is considered a legitimate state, that use of force is considered legitimate as well. Like people accept, even if they don't like it, they accept that use of force as a legitimate. Even if if a traffic police stops you, even if you are miffed at that, still you generally think that it's the right thing to do. They have the right, they have a legitimate right to stop you, for example. If you don't recognize the legitimacy of a state, then that state, if a large number of people don't recognize the legitimacy of that state, then that state is a very weak state and can't exist for a long time. For long. Yeah. So what distinguishes the modus vivendi of the state from other human association is the force, but not any use of the force, but generally the legitimate use of force. Okay, these are the most important thing, but then you have other things like most states have a territory. It's a human association with a mass of land where people live. So we can't think of human association generally without a land, or if they live in part of water like in Southeast Asia, that will include water as well. But that comes under the general meaning of territory, and the area of jurisdiction. So jurisdiction mean in that area the laws of that associations are enforced and respected, etc. And generally it has geographical boundaries as well of some sort. And one of the most important aspect, and most of the state have some sort of based on some sort of notion of sovereignty. Now, sovereignty literally means, I think, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Supreme authority. Supreme power. What in Urdu we will call Hakmiyat Ala, or the ultimate authority. Obviously, this authority is considered legitimate, otherwise, by most people. In that state, implicitly or explicitly, and they refer to this supreme authority whenever there is any disputes in the use of force, etc., and making of law. So it's an abstract concept, but in most conception of sovereign state, you will find a conception of sovereignty. For example, the modern state sovereignty belongs to the people. In tribe, the sovereignty belongs to the elders or their traditions, etc. Whatever they are. Islam, it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, etc., and his book and the words of his messenger, etc. So these are some of the main elements of any conception of state, any conception of at least developed states, irrespective of whether they are modern states or medieval state or ancient state. So now, what is the modern state? So modern state. Obviously, in modern time, state. Now, if we go through that list, so it's a form of human association, modern state. All that. What else we said? The function of modern state remains the same: social order, etc. However, they define social order. Is force. Yeah, force is important. Obviously, territory is important, and sovereignty is important. Although the conception of sovereignty is different, it's based on apparently the people, and the actual thing which is the capital which rules. That's why most modern states are capital. And none of the modern state doesn't differ from any of medieval or ancient or primitive state in any of these things. No Foucauldian can argue that modern state differs in any substantive way. What modern state differs from it is more complex, and the techniques are more developed, and that affects the way it governs. Its reach is way. That's why state has become more important than it was previously, more central, because the same. And one thing which distinguishes modern state from other is the concentration, extreme concentration of force and everything. And that's because the system we live in is capitalism, and capitalism is the other name of concentration of everything: power, money, and anything related to it. So in this respect, the difference between modern state and previous state is qualitative, not quantitative in a sense, not qualitative, not the difference in kind. Okay, now what is Islam? Now, Islam is a way of life. It's a civilization. It's built and so in Islam uh, is ad-din, and one way to understand ad-din is the state. So ad-din, in ad-din in the law of Islam, you can't reduce the concept of deen to state, but for sure the concept of ad-din as against religion, especially the Protestant conception of religion, contains within it a notion of state. So in fact, to deny that Islam is a state is to deny that Islam is a deen, a living civilization. And if we go through the list, so Islam is a form of human association. Islam is al-Jama'ah, is the association. It's a ummah in that sense, and in that sense it is an association al-Jama'ah and not a nation, because nation is also association, but nation is based on blood ties, etc. And Islam build a community and Jama'ah and ummah based on iman, millat abikum Ibrahim. So it is a human association. Number two, social order, establishing social order and peace is one of the maqasid of Sharia, maqasid of Islam, one of the purposes of Islam among mu'mineen, and because one of the purpose of the prophethood is yuzakkihim, he purifies them. And purification means purification of relations. And a state is a form of relation, association. It interconnects all those relation and association, but that doesn't mean that Islam doesn't have a state. Okay, what was the next one? Methods. So use of force is important. Legitimate use of force is well defined in Islam. There are laws which are based on rules, based on morality, but there are laws which are derived from and it establishes Muslim community. It has relation to other communities and territory, and it recognizes the jurisdiction of Islamic community. It has its boundaries, different sort of boundaries, but there are boundaries, hudud, sughur, the whole concept. And finally, the concept of sovereignty is undeniable in Islam. Al-hukmu lillah, al-hakmiyah. That's one of the agreed upon creeds of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'at and other Muslims as well. There's no difference between Ash'ari, Maturidiyya, Hanbalis on this. Al-hakmiyatu lillahi ta'ala. So there is an Islamic state, there is a modern state, there is a state. So where is the impossibility and contradiction? Unless you see Islam as some sort of self-indulgent Protestant religion. Even Protestant had states in the 17th, 18th century, but if you are an extreme Lutheran and for you religion is just relationship between yourself and self and the other self, which you consider as God. Maybe you won't have a state, but on the face of it, to deny that Islam has a state or needs a state is to deny that Islam has a concept of force, Islam has a concept of sovereignty, and especially in the face of the strongest states in the world. It's just persuading Muslims to succumb to imperialism and capitalism and not to jihad fi sabilillah wa jahadu fillah ka jihadi wa wajtabakum wa ma ja'ala alaykum fi ad-din min haraj millata abikum Ibrahim hanifa wa ma kana min al-mushrikeen and inna ad-dina inda Allah al-Islam wal amru kulluhu lillah, etc., etc. So let's go back. So the argument of the book is fairly simple. The Islamic state, judged by any standard definition of what modern states represent, is both an impossible and contradiction. At this point, any standard definition, we just looked at some very uncontroversial points, and it doesn't seem like Islamic state is a contradiction in terms, and given the modern condition, actually it is needed more than ever, and that's why all modern Islamic thinkers who have considered the issue of modernity and imperialism as an important issue have emphasized the need for an Islamic state. And whenever Islam is established, Iran or in Afghanistan, that's through the establishment of Islamic states. Otherwise, it would be a soft a very soft target for the enemy of this deen and this ummah. Okay, so we'll stop here and we'll continue from here, inshallah.